let's head out back to the lobby now, joined by Conservative MP Jake Berry. Jake, thank you very much. And I feel like whenever I speak to you from the lobby, I'm talking to you about kind of Conservative Party infighting. But I mean, what reassurance can you give to the viewing public this evening that the Conservative Party is a united party? Because we're talking about rebels in the dozens here.
So what we're talking about is Conservative MPs, in fact all MPs, because there's some SNP amendments down tonight, doing their job, which is interrogating and trying to improve legislation. Now clearly for the Prime Minister and his team it's not great to have 70 in total, mixture of parties, but 70 people try to amend his piece of legislation. But the Prime Minister has won. He has got it through today unamended. Tomorrow will be, in fact, in my view, a bigger test because there's this vote on what we call the Rule 39 order for your viewers on TalkTV. That's basically stopping foreign judges blocking UK immigration policy. And what was 70 this evening might well go higher tomorrow. And then, of course, there's that crucial third reading vote. So while it's a bit of a victory for the government tonight that they've got it through unamended, I think the problems will continue tomorrow.
It does certainly seem that way. Look, any surprises for you, Jake, in terms of the resignations of Lee Anderson and Brendan Clark-Smith as deputies of the Conservative Party?
Well, look, we actually saw 3 this evening, 1 PPS and 2 deputy chairmen of the party, Lee Anderson and Brendan Clark-Smith. Conservative colleagues feel really strongly about this, and they're people who are on that first rung with the ministerial ladder and have jumped off because they think, like me, because I voted in support of the amendments, just to be clear, they think, like me, this is a massively important issue. And guess what? We all represent blue-collar, red-wall constituencies, and we're knocking on doors every single week. And people are saying, you, the government, are not going far enough, and we're trying to get the government to toughen its position. So we shouldn't be surprised that many of those members of Parliament in that lobby pushing the government to tighten up this legislation tonight were from a tribe, the tribe of the Red Wall, and they're not going to give up. They're going to keep pushing tomorrow.
OK, well, given, thank you that you've shared that information, that you backed the amendments. It brings back to the conversation I was just having with Jack and Kate here in the studio, which is how far will you then go? Would it be that you would back the amendments so far tomorrow that you'd be willing to see the bill fail?
Well, there's a lot that could happen tomorrow. First of all, if the bill's amended, which it may well be, it will extend into an additional day. But if it goes through unamended, if we see a repeat of what we've seen tonight, then there is this big third reading vote. I'll be completely honest with you, I actually haven't made my mind up yet. I know that I won't vote for it. I didn't vote for it at second reading. Whether I will take that next step of voting against it, as you were just saying on the show, and I heard what you were saying, that is a really big step because at least the government has a plan. We know the Labour Party has no plan whatsoever to deal with immigration, and no matter how poor this legislation is, it's probably better than where we are today. So whether I or anyone else will take that next step of actually striking it down will be conversations that happen tomorrow. And the reason I haven't made my mind up isn't because I'm a naturally indecisive person. I do normally know my own mind, is that I'm quite confident now, given the size of the votes that we've seen in favour of these amendments this evening, that the sort of telephone lines will be glowing white hot in Downing Street as they phone round the leaders of the Rebel Alliance, as they may call it, I'm not one of those leaders, to try and find what compromise they can offer to save this piece of legislation in tomorrow's vote in Parliament. So let's see what tomorrow brings.
Well, I wonder if the Rebel Alliance will be watching you right now and thinking there's somebody we can bring across to our side tomorrow and see this before. I mean, just repeating one more time for the viewer, for the voter.
They don't need to. They don't need to. I was with them.
Yeah, you were with them today, but you don't know whether you're going to be with them tomorrow.
No, I will be with them on all of the amendments tomorrow. I think this Rule 39, it's boring, techie, dry as dust stuff, but it's really important. We should live in a country where British politicians and British judges decide what our laws are, not unelected judges somewhere in Europe. That's why I will be voting with them on that amendment tomorrow. But as I say, when it comes down to striking down that piece of legislation, and I guess most of them, are committing this evening, because I believe, and I think most of them probably believe as well, that we will see significant compromise from the government tomorrow. Let's just put it at its most bluntest, if you like, the number of MPs who voted in favour of that First Amendment are enough to defeat the government if they were so minded. So I think we're in a bit of a situation as who blinks first, and I suspect that it will be the government.
In terms of the voter, as I was getting to, how about if they feel that you're just wasting their time at this point?
Well, they may feel that, but I just go back to my first point is I don't work for the Conservative Party. I'm proudly a Conservative MP. I work for my voters in Rosendale and Darwen who sent me here to this Parliament. One of the things they sent me here to do was spend my time scrutinising legislation and be confident that it was going to work, and where I could see ways of improving it to try and make that happen, to try and put down amendments and vote for them or vote against amendments that I think make it worse. I know for your average voter that isn't the most important thing, let alone in their day, probably in their year, that MPs do that in Parliament, but it is the job of Parliament. It is the job of our MPs to try and improve legislation, to improve people's lives, and that's what I believe I and colleagues on all sides of the House have tried to do, and in some cases have done this evening.
Jake Berry, MP, thank you very much. Fascinating conversation.